for me, I knew this would be a once in a lifetime opportunity. It's not very often that a large professional services firm like A&M comes into a market like Australia. And for me, it was like, am I going to regret this in 5 years' time if I haven't done it? And I think that was the answer. That was for me was I need to give it a go and see how it works.
Bruce. Bruce.
Hi everyone, we have a change of scenery because I'm traveling for conferences, but we're gonna keep bringing you new episodes. So let's begin. What does it take to build a national tax practice completely from the ground up in a country where your firm had zero presence and do it in under 2 years? Today on Bizarro Brews, I'm sitting down with Sean Keegan, who is Managing Director and Head of Tax at Australia at Alvarez and Marsal. Sean has over 25 years of experience in M&A tax, spent nearly 8 years as a transaction tax partner at EY in Sydney, and in January 2024, left to do something most senior tax professionals never attempt: build a full-service national tax team from a blank sheet of paper, growing to practitioners across Sydney, Perth, and Melbourne. Sean works at the sharp end of Australian M&A tax right now, advising private capital investors and corporates navigating tax office scrutiny, foreign resident CGT reform, Pillar 2, and the question every professional services leader is wrestling with: what happens to pricing when AI does the work? I'm Adam Tahir, founder of Bizarro, and this is Bizarro Brews. Hi, Sean. How's it going? How's everything going in Australia? You're our first actually guest ever from that part of the world.
Yeah, no, it's good here. We're in the middle of winter here at the moment, Adam. So it's getting cold, relatively cold for Australia, but all going really. And it's exciting to be your first guest from Australia.
So let's start off. Why don't you tell us about what made you interested in tax? Like, what was something happened in college? Did you always knew you wanted to go in tax? How did that journey go?
I don't know that anyone ever thinks they want to go into tax, Adam, to be completely honest. Well, at least I didn't. So I sort of fell into it. So I was at university or colleges you guys call it in the US, and I was doing quite well, and I received an offer to be a vacation or an intern over the summer intern at PwC. And at the time I was like, great, let's go and see what this looks like. And I applied for a job in the corporate finance team and they said no to me. So I ended up falling into the tax business. So for me, I actually didn't do any tax subjects at university at all. So for me, I hadn't really even thought about tax. And then I think from my perspective, went along and I loved it because I was, I was learning it every day. And I was doing new challenges and just meeting lots of smart people. For me, there's lots and lots of smart people who do tax. And for me, that really, really drew me to doing it. But no, I definitely didn't go up through high school and even through university thinking I was going to be a tax advisor.
Okay, so you go in, and what was that first experience like at PwC? What were you doing? What were the tasks given to you? You were an intern, so...
Yeah. Oh, look, there was lots of photocopying, as everyone probably as an intern knows. There's lots of photocopying. That this is a long time ago, Adam. I'm a bit older than you, so there's lots of photocopying. I think the fax machine still existed at that stage, and the secretaries, as they were referred to then, still had typewriters at some points as well to fill in some certain forms. So it was for me, it was just the energy. Everyone was in the office. I was taken out to client meetings and getting to understand what clients were doing and why they were coming and talking to the partners at PwC about their tax issues. And for me, I realized that the team who I'd be working for, they were all a valuable part of the business. And they're all people who had some great solutions. And for me, that was the interesting part of why I wanted to continue down the tax world.
And so you were there. Did you start full time at PwC after that?
I did, yeah. So I must have done something right because they did offer me a graduate. So I was at PwC. I stayed at PwC for another 5 years until I effectively went through and did my CPA program, or our CA in Australia, and did that with PwC. It was doing a lot of tax compliance work. So I went from being an intern into a graduate for a number of years. And in Australia, it's sort of a rite of passage that we move overseas for a couple of years. I moved over to London and continued to work over in London, not doing tax. I was actually working at a couple of investment banks to see if tax was for me. And then came back to Australia and realized I loved what I was doing.
So Australia, okay, let's talk about London for a second.
Yep.
So at London, have you seen the show Industry?
No, I have not, Adam. No, I don't get to watch a lot of TV. I have 3 kids and a full-time job at the moment, so I don't not watching a lot of TV at the moment, unfortunately. Okay. I'll have to look it up though.
Yeah, it's based on an investment bank in London, and it has I guess they just finished the 4th season, and it's amazing and something I it has like a very interesting like subject to it. But anyway, so investment banking, were you working on M&A deals, buy side, sell side, or trying to take them public?
I actually started just in back office doing product controlling, so building P&Ls and the rest for all of the traders. So I got to get a good understanding of that. The second half of my London stint, I was actually working valuing exotic derivatives. And so at university, I actually did a lot of science and maths as part of my degree. And I got to spend a lot of time building effectively a new practice where there was a whole heap of exotic businesses and exotic derivatives being put around just before the GFC back in the middle of 2000s. And so I spent some time doing that, and I loved my time doing that, but it was a different culture, and that's why I wanted to come back.
Help me understand, what's the difference between a normal derivative product and an exotic derivative product?
Yeah, look, it's been a long time, but short answer is you've got your simple things like an option where you're just using a volatility. So you're just using one input, but some of these exotic derivatives, they had 5 or 6 different inputs, and the traders who were putting these things in place, they couldn't value them. They didn't have those inputs. So part of our job was to work out what the mathematical formula was to value those things, and then secondly, what the inputs should be, and we'd have to go off and find where those inputs were. So it was exciting, but I think that industry effectively died around the time of the GFC when all of those exotic derivatives just got too hard, and I think people moved back into credit default swaps and options and interest rate swaps and all of those sort of more vanilla thing.
Okay, I love some like credit default swaps. I was rewatching The Big Short again the other day. So I'm in Vegas right now for conferences, and one of the things I do to relax at night is just like watch an old movie while I'm prepping for the next day. And they were like talking about default swaps again, and I'm like, how did people never think of that part? Anyways, so going back, so you're in London at PwC. How do you switch? Sorry, investment banking. How do you go to EY? What's that journey like? What made you switch?
Yeah, so for me, I was at PwC for a couple of extra years. For me, it was I was approached by EY. I was targeted to move over there. I had effectively a private equity client base, and EY wanted me to come and join. And do that. For me, I've always loved a different challenge, and part of the reason we'll get to, I assume, is part of my new role here after leaving EY. But for me, it was just a new challenge, and just being able to back myself. And so for me, it was not leaving PwC because I didn't enjoy it. For me, it was a new challenge and just a way of. I'd been at PwC since I was literally a 21-year-old, and so for me to leave, to be seen as not that 21-year-old anymore, or just to be seen as a partner was a big thing for me. So that was the thinking behind my change.
And in Australia, what's that culture difference like between PwC and EY? Was there a difference?
Look, they've all got different cultures, but ultimately they've got their own cultures. I think EY had some good things and some bad things, and PwC had some good things and some bad things. But from my perspective, it's all ultimately the same culture. It's the same business. We're all people business, and you have to find ways of motivating, incentivizing your staff. And I think the big 4 firms do that in different ways and prioritize different things. But ultimately, it's the broadly the same culture.
And then, so you get recruited to go to EY. Obviously, you're really good at your job. You have the technical skills, but now you're in like this people management and bringing the clients in. What made you what do you think that tool set was that like helped you succeed at EY as a partner? And what kind of leadership philosophies did you have to like bring your team in?
Yeah, lots. And it was a really challenging time, probably the hardest part of my career, because I was in a brand new firm. I was in a brand new partner in a brand new firm where you don't have those established networks and contacts, both in Australia and globally. So for me, it was re-establishing myself, Adam, and just going out and making myself known within the internal EY networks. So that took some time. I think it's just persistence. For me, it was being persistent and consistent, going out, seeing clients, not just seeing them once, but continuing to follow up and doing that on a regular basis. That was probably the one thing that worked for me. And it took 3 years before the work started flowing through regularly. But those first 3 years were just a lot of time out seeing people, talking to as many people as would listen to me, and being persistent and consistent, as I said.
Did you do any cold calling, cold outreach, taking people out to lunch?
No, I've been lucky enough. I haven't had to do a lot of cold calling. The good thing, I suppose, is that EY brand gets you a phone. Most people will answer the phone, or most people will answer an email if you've got the EY email address. So I did do a little bit of it, but more for me, it was going to functions and conferences and those things where I'd go up and make introductions that way. I find that's that's better than calling someone during the middle of their day, interrupting their train of thought to talk about their tax compliance work, and when they're not in the frame of mind. Whereas if they're at a conference, they're a bit more open minded and happy to learn more about your business and do things that way. So that's probably for me where I spent more time and focused more that way.
Okay. And so your career's going great. And then an offer comes into you saying like, hey, we don't have a presence in this country. Would you be willing to start this tax practice? And now you need to go ahead. What made you go like, I'm ready for this. I got to pick it up. I want to build it out from scratch. Like, were you not just like, things got too easy at EY for you and you just want to pick this up?
Oh, look, they definitely didn't get too easy, and I love my time at EY.
Yeah.
And to be honest, if the opportunity at A&M didn't come across my plate, I'd still be there and I'd still be enjoying my time. Look, there was lots of reasons. It was a very hard decision to give up effectively the comfort of a Big Four environment. In Australia, we are a smaller tax market than in the US, for example, and so we don't have the ability to carry as many tax advisory firms as you can in the US and other larger markets. For me, I knew this would be a once in a lifetime opportunity. It's not very often that a large professional services firm like A&M comes into a market like Australia. And for me, it was like, am I going to regret this in 5 years' time if I haven't done it? And I think that was the answer. That was for me, was I need to give it a go and see how it works. And at the moment, it's been going great, but it could have gone up in flaming fire and not worked as well, Adam. But I think for me, it was backing myself. And as I said before, I love challenges and I love doing things differently. And this seemed like a perfect opportunity to do that. I'd been a partner at EY for 10 years. I knew enough about myself. I knew I was comfortable, and I knew my clients trusted me. So it was more about moving to the next phase of my career and trying to build a team and doing those things. And that's what I was chasing.
So how was that first day like?
Yeah, I mean, it's still daunting. I still wake up every morning going, have I done the right thing effectively? Not in a way where I change it, but have I bitten off more than I can chew? And I think that first day we literally had no precedence. We didn't have an engagement letter. We didn't have a signature on our emails. We didn't have anything. So it was very, very different. In Australia, the brand was not known. No one knew who we were. They couldn't pronounce the name. They couldn't spell the name. So there was, again, I would feel like I was back to EY. My first 2 years were just out there talking to as many people as possible, educating them what our business was and what we were going to be building. I mean, I spent a lot of time hiring as well. So we went from employee number one to we've got about 140 in our tax team in Australia in under two years. So it was a significant amount of coffees and hiring people. The first team that we had were spending a lot of time just doing business development proposal decks and just getting things together that you expect in a fully functioning historic tax firm like the Big Four, where they've got years and years of precedents and engagement letters and people know who each other are. All of those things, bringing together a team, getting them to introduce themselves, and then building a culture from there. There was lots of things to do about it.
So that team started, and basically you're technically a startup at this point, right? You started this out. Things move really fast. You need to implement a change over there. Are you working closely with A&M US, A&M UK, and Europe to like bring those like facilities and like because now in the US, the brand name's pretty strong, especially in the M&A transaction work, right? A&M's pretty strong as a brand and coming in. How's that compared to the Australian market, where the M&A market is not that big as the US, but
yeah. Look, we were lucky that well, a couple of things in that. So for us, there was zero brand. As I said before, there was zero brand in the Australian market for A&M. We were a startup, but we were lucky enough to be a startup funded by a billion-dollar or multi-billion-dollar revenue professional services firm in the US and Europe. So we were able to leverage and lean on the teams there. But when it came to actually going out and talking to clients, for us, we had to Australianize the A&M brand, and we had to make it our own brand. And then from there, it rolls, and we hired some great people after that, some really exceptional managing directors and exceptional people in the team, and that they bring their own brand, and that expands. But it just takes time. It was, I think for us, it's, as I said before, clients trust you, but they don't know the brand. So there's a little bit of they have to trust you, and then that becomes the brand for A&M.
And then how would you characterize, you work both in the UK and then Australia. How would you characterize the difference in the markets? How would you characterize the differences specifically in the accounting markets? How does like the industry change? And the
Yes.
reason I say that is because Australia has tons of advisory startups, specifically in the accounting industry, that has come in. First, the biggest one that we all know is Xero.
Yeah, so absolutely. And I actually worked in the US as well for a couple of years at PwC. So
Okay.
I was in Europe for a couple of years. So I'm able to see the difference. Now, obviously the US, the UK, they are bigger markets. So you can have some really, really specialized tax advisors, be that some tax you can get into partnership, and they just advise on partnership returns, partnership issues, particularly in the US. For us in Australia, we have to be a bit more generalist. The market is not as big, and so for us, we need to know more. So I'm an M&A expert, but I also need to understand how that feeds into doing the tax returns or the compliance or what the employment tax affairs are. And I bring in my experts to obviously help on those things, but my clients expect me to know that. Whereas I think in the US and the UK, it's accepted that there's 5-10 people on a call and each of them has their own specialty and they're all talking about different things. So I think that was very different. And when it comes to things like the number of startups in Australia, I just think that's the Australian culture. I think we don't like to accept status quo. I think everyone likes to do things differently, including myself. And so I think that's why you see lots of those opportunities come up, is that we like to think differently, and then hopefully that works through. The other thing we're seeing, Adam, a lot at the moment now in Australia is a number of private equity firms coming in and backing a number of accounting firms, so buying accounting firms. So that's been something that's happened in the US and the UK, but that is happening now in Australia, and it's going to be interesting to see what that brings to.
Yeah. And then what do you see is the impact? Like I see private equity, there has been some really good cases in the US where it has gone exponentially well for like the markets have been picked up because they've been like modernized right away. But there's been other where the transaction hasn't gone as well. What do you think is like the best way? Let's say A&M has some private equity backing. Let's say tomorrow, a new star CPA firm is growing. If you're advising a private equity company to come in and buy, what would you tell them to be like on the lookout for, or what to see in the transaction to make sure it goes successfully?
I've been thinking about the answer to this question for a lot recently. And I think for me, it's really about your leadership. It's about who you bring in. It's about your first initial hires and making sure that they're top tier and elite. And it comes back to clients buy the person. I think the days of just going and buying the firm's brand are done, at least in Australia. People are happy to buy people, and they will follow. Clients will follow the person that they trust to advise them in their tax affairs. So I think that's really critical for any firm starting up and similar to us, even though we're not backed by private equity. You need to get your first leaders correct. So I think that's the point. You need to make sure that you've got enough scale. So you can't just have 5 people sitting there. Their clients need to know that if they send you 15 transactions, you've got the team behind you. So it's about getting the right people. It's about having the scale. And then I think it's about incentivizing your staff correctly. And that's probably the reason we have been able to be successful at A&M is we have a different incentive model to the Big Four. And a lot of our team who have joined are very focused on doing lots of work, doing great work, but also being paid and remunerated for that appropriately. So if they know that they're sitting in the office till 2 a.m. doing tax returns or doing some M&A transactions, they're going to get paid for that. Whereas in the Big Four environment, that level of direct correlation between what you've done and what you get paid doesn't exist as much as what it used to.
Interesting. And then I saw one of your posts I want to talk about on LinkedIn where you're talking about like AI and pricing on that.
Yeah.
Have you reached a conclusion? Have you gotten did you get more clarity on how you want to do it? I have my own thoughts on it.
Yeah.
And happy to
I'd
get
love to hear your thoughts as well, Adam. I know the short answer is we haven't reached a landing, and where I've got to the conclusion is that I actually think there's an education piece for all of our clients as to just because AI might be automating some processes doesn't mean that we're still not spending the same amount of time on things. It's just probably you're getting more senior time. So instead of me in the past pushing work all the way down to the graduate does the work and it comes back up and you sign it off and go, yeah, all looks good. Now it's probably just going down to a manager, the manager and myself and maybe a director are sitting there and spending our time and applying some more judgment to that because we've got the answer and we can spend more time. So I think there's an education piece that we're we're taking certain parts out of the machine, but that's still getting to the same answer and it still costs the same. Sometimes it costs more now because there's probably more judgment. We are spending more time. We're finding different ways around stuff. So I think for us, pricing, I don't think it does change. We've also got the issue of how much the AI tokens cost, Adam, and how much everything works. So been running those calculations, and I think we've got the teams using AI here, and by the time you get through it at the end of the year, you probably got to the token cost would be what 2 or 3 individuals would cost anyway. So there's a little bit of, have you really taken much cost out of the business? You've probably done it in a way that eradicates the mistakes and allows more of that judgment time. So I think from an advisory firm, their costs are probably going to be the same. You've just replaced employee costs with token costs and AI costs, but the amount of what you've actually done and the output should theoretically be better.
So then how does AI replicate what Sean knows for 20 years that is not available on the internet and is in his brain and is learned experiences and those decision making? How does AI learn that part?
Well, I think this is the good thing for people who are older like me, Adam. You don't, probably, I can't be replaced because I do have that 20, 25 years of experience where I've seen a lot and I know what to apply. Saying that, everything we do is a process. I would be working through, if you look at a due diligence and we're doing a due diligence on a company, you'd sit there and go, okay, we're going to review this. And I've seen that issue before in this other industry. We've got to work that through. So everything in my head theoretically can be put in a process. And that's something that I'm focused on building, and the team have focused on building those processes and getting those down. It still doesn't replace at least for the short term, it doesn't replace the judgment and the experience that I have. Look, at some point in the next 5 to 10 years, I have no doubt that all of my experience is probably sitting somewhere in some level of AI tool and LLM model, and you don't need me. But for now, I think, that's where we're at. But it's interesting times. I mean, no one knows the answer, and for us, it's just being flexible and rolling with the punches as things change.
But doesn't it make you more defensible in the sense that, okay, here's my thesis on it.
Yeah,
so
I'd love to.
Now let's take an example like Canva. All right, Canva, big company, pretty big tax department, they go there. Don't you think that Canva's tax department now is going to do 80 to 90% of the work in-house and then bring it to you and get your opinion and sign off on it?
They very well are capable of doing that, and they're capable of doing that at the moment. I also think that the use of advisors is to not just do the work, but it is some level of insurance policy as well. It goes wrong, so you get someone to sue. But I also think it's the experience we're seeing with different clients. What are we seeing with the competitors of Canva, for example, using that analogy? What else are others doing that we can share best practices? And I don't think you can replace that level of best practice. Now, in terms of automating tax returns, absolutely. I think a lot of that work will be done more in-house, or potentially the other way to think about it is a lot of those in-house teams are reduced, and potentially that work is outsourced to a firm who does have the best AI tools. So it's a bit of a balancing act there. Whether clients decide to do that stuff in-house, or whether they just say, you know what, we actually don't need this functionality in-house, and let's go and outsource that. So that's the other way to think about it.
And then because you are that insurance policy in this case, shouldn't your premium could go up, right? Instead of you charging maybe before like 2,000, you could be charging 10,000, because now you're providing risk mitigation, and that's where they come to you for.
And I think that's where clients are happy to pay for, where there's value on that. So they're coming to us for our experience, but we know how the tax office or the IRS or someone deals with those issues and deals with that situation, because we've seen it for other clients. We've dealt with that, so we can impart that wisdom, that real-time wisdom, and that's not going to be sitting in some large language model anywhere else. It's going to be because we've experienced that, and we can pass it on. So absolutely, the price that we charge may be higher if we are moving to just more of a review and judgment, and people need to pay for that judgment. That comes down to my comment before. There's some level of education for clients around and what they're paying for. And I think the initial instinct every time I talk to clients at the moment is, well, you're using AI, your fee should be lower. I think that's naturally right for some process-driven parts like tax compliance. But when it comes to transactions, when it comes to dealing with the tax authorities, when it comes to all of those judgment points, probably the amount that we need to be paid goes up as a result. So yeah, it's a balancing act.
Okay, so let's talk about the tax authorities right now. Scrutiny is up from the Australian tax office. we've been seeing that on like credits and like where the engagement's coming from. Where do you think the wind's shifting? And also specifically in Australia, Pillar Two's been an issue as well. Your clients are navigating. How do you see that environment going out for, let's extrapolate it 5 years, 10 years right now? And what do you think could be improved upon in the area?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably one of my three massive issues at the moment that we're trying to deal with is in terms of dealing with the tax office. And so to give you some numbers, that recently the Australian government, as part of their annual budget, gave more funding to the Australian Taxation Office to increase the level of activity. We're lucky or unlucky enough in Australia to have probably one of the most aggressive tax administrators. And so the tax office are very, very aggressive with lots of things. And every time I talk to foreign investors investing into Australia, they can't believe the amount of scrutiny that foreign investors are put on. So I can only see that increasing the amount of activity that the Australian Taxation Office has on all taxpayers, be that Australian domestic taxpayers, be that foreign residents investing into Australia. And so for us, it's everything we're doing is with the lens of when the tax office comes and reviews this, are you prepared? And that means we're thinking about contemporaneous documentation at the time of the transaction. So previously we'll worry about it if it comes. Now it's you have to do those things. We have to be ready for a review. And previously it may be that we would never go to the tax office before a transaction. For example, if you sell, you just make the sale and hope that no one finds out. Now we're actually going and talking to the tax office real time. So for us, the level of interactivity with them is going to be instead of let's pretend it never happened and hope no one finds it, to now let's be open about it. And so that's a real change in how we do things. I also think the tax office here in Australia, and probably happening all around the world, is using more data. And so they're getting real-time data from transactions or from spending. And so they're identifying things real time, and they're coming back and asking those questions real time. So the days of putting your head in the sand and hoping that no one was going to find the issue for us, we just can't advise like that. We have to be assuming that we're going to be talking to the tax office, and that changes how you provide advice.
Yeah, and then same thing with Pillar Two, right? Because like now, depending on where you're filing in the jurisdiction and what kind of like agreements they have with the different countries, your data is going to be shared all across the world.
Absolutely.
With every single authority. So now you need to make sure like your M&A transactions bulletproof. Does it hold up in court? If you're moving IP around, you should have a business reason for it.
Absolutely. And it just means, I mean, it's a great point. It's not just domestically, you need to be thinking about this internationally as well. And whereas my data ending up internationally, and what authorities will track it back to Australia. So yeah, if for me as an Australian multinational, and if I'm buying a business in the US and thinking, well, it's all involves the US and I don't need to worry too much, that those assumptions are false.
Yeah. In terms of like the investment perspective, where do you think more inbound is coming in to the Australian market? People are investing more, or where do you think how has that been?
Well, look, I think naturally the technology companies are moving into Australia. We've still got a lot of natural resources. So we're still seeing lots of people invest into Australia's natural resources. The technology companies, the AI frontier businesses are coming into Australia as well. We're seeing lots of data centers, like everywhere else around the world. Data centers, we've got a lot of sun and a lot of wind in Australia, and not a lot of people. So lots of renewables as well. So that typically that money comes from offshore. So we're definitely seeing a lot of money coming from offshore. The unfortunate thing for them is that the current Australian government is very focused on making sure that those foreigners pay their fair share of tax, and in some cases potentially pay more than their fair share of tax. Yeah. And so we're seeing a lot more scrutiny from the tax office and from the Australian government in terms of how the tax settings apply to these foreign investors. And I think at some point there will be a tipping point where it goes, this is all too hard, and maybe Australia, it's got some great opportunities, but it's all too hard, and we'll just find somewhere else. I hope that doesn't happen. That's the risk.
Yeah, because it's like, if you look up like the top 20 companies in the world, like look at their market caps, wouldn't like the world would want them to like invest and come open. So they would try to make business as easy as possible. Like Singapore does a really good job. It's like, if you think about like the credits they give you, like Netherlands too, because of their trading network. If Australia is such as big place, as you said, like small people, has tons of natural resources, really good market, really like English speaking nation. So really open over there. So that should like impact the market and be more broad and open.
I mean, you're preaching to the converted, Adam, when it comes to that. It makes complete sense, particularly for a non-Australian looking in from the outside. I think There is definitely some political tension with that argument in Australia, and particularly at the moment. So the economy is going okay, but it's not great, and people are
Yeah.
probably under pressure, and like globally, the pressure of pricing and inflation and everything else, and the government is being asked to spend more money to have to find that money from somewhere else. And if you're a politician at the moment, do you tax your foreigners investing who don't get a vote, or do you tax your Australian people who do get a vote? And you know where that vote will go every single time. So I think that's if you keep it in that lens. Look, is that the right answer for the Australian economy long term? Absolutely not. But it does explain some of the reasons, in my view, as to why they're taking this approach.
Yeah. No. Gotcha. Yeah, understand. And really like your point of view on that. Okay, so one of the last questions I love asking my guests is, you're done with your career. Let's say you're at the tail end of your career, you achieved everything you wanted to do in tax. What are you pursuing next?
Apart from seeing my wife and children a little bit more,
Yeah. What's one thing you're like, once I'm done, this is what I want to do?
look, I think for me, I can't sit still. And so I'm really passionate about technology. I love what AI can potentially do. And I really see that there's so many opportunities to make our life better as a result of AI. For me, all of these smart young kids coming through now from universities and colleges, they're coming in and doing the same thing the way that I did it 25, 30 years ago. And I'd love to see technology keep everyone who is very, very, very good at their job interested in their job, and finding different ways of doing that. So for me, I think it'll be a technology overlay with some level of tax, and whether that's an automation, whether that's finding different ways of doing their jobs. That for me, I think that's what I love doing. I know my whole house is automated. I turn the TV off from my bed, and all those sort of things. For me, I love technology, and so I'll always be involved in that. And I think that's probably where I'll be. But I've got a bit more to go, Adam. So I haven't really thought about that. I haven't allowed myself to think
Yeah.
that. Great question. But yeah, it's definitely going to be some level of technology overlay. That's without doubt. What that's doing, I'm not 100% sure, but hopefully I'll get to that stage where I can start thinking about that soon. For now, there's a few more other challenges to get through.
Who would voice your AI in your house? Like whose voice are you gonna use if you had to pick like a celebrity or
Oh gosh, to be honest, I'm happy with the old Siri voice. I'm not a big fan of change when it comes to those sort of things. If it works, and you move on. But it would have to. It would, probably, I'm going to say Steve Irwin, just with the dodgy Australian accent and all the rest. Just to hear that, I think that would be quite funny. But it would definitely be someone with a unique voice character. Let's go with Steve Irwin. Apart from Siri, I still don't mind Siri. It's just the traditional Siri. So yeah,
Irwin's amazing. His whole family is like fascinating. Like it's
100%.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And I think people think he's representative of Australians, but I can guarantee I've never jumped on a crocodile in my life and picked up snakes and all those sort of things. So yeah, he's definitely a unique character, and it's a shame he died so early.
Yeah, and then if someone's graduating right now from college in Australia, they've finished their accounting and they're getting into the workforce, what would you advise? Like, what do they spend their first 2-3 years on?
Yeah, I think first 2-3 years is just being willing to learn, being open, and I think the skill set is going to be changing for what we expect the people straight out of college and university will be. For me, I want people who are able to build relationships, and I think doesn't matter what happens with AI, there'll still be relationships. We'll still be a relationship business. Clients still need to trust the answer that they're getting from me. So I want people to be building those skills early on. It used to be come and sit down at your desk and do your 70-hour chart rules each week and do those things. And for me, that's changing. And so I'm really looking at people who are able to form relationships and build natural bonds really quickly, and then help them develop those skills so that when they're going to speak to clients and future clients, they've already got those skills. So for me, it's not just about doing things the way things have been done, but trying to differentiate yourself. Try to think about using technology and having those things, and the people who can use technology, they've already got a natural step ahead, and then challenging the ways things are done. For me, I love when all of the new joiners come in and they challenge me on why we're doing things this way. So I think it's learning and doing what you're told as well, but it's also challenging the status quo in an appropriate way, but more importantly, building your relationships, and internal and external networks is the most important thing for all the people joining, and that will differentiate themselves. And to be honest, that will mean they'll have a job in 20 years time as well. And that's the things that I really encourage all of my new joiners to be focused on.
Nice. Okay, perfect. And finally, like if somebody wants to, where do you think like A&M, what's like your next 5-year plan for A&M?
Yeah, I'd love to have, at the moment we've got 20, well, nearly 30 tax partners. I'd love to have another 20 tax partners, probably all promoted internally. I'd love to be competing and probably sitting above the big four in Australia. Adam, that's my goal, is to be there. I think a lot of our clients do see us alongside the big four, and I'd love to naturally move up and be seen as a differentiator and a unique, completely unique firm, tax advisory firm in Australia. I think for us at A&M, we don't just have the tax business, we also have the transaction advisory and we have the management consulting part. Yeah. And for us, without the audit practice, and that's a real topical point in Australia at the moment with audit and everything that one of the big four firms has been doing around the audit and some of the noise they're seeing. So for us, not just being a tax advisory firm, but just a more broader consulting firm, professional advisory firm, the opportunities that come with working alongside the management consultants who are cost outs or performance improvement or doing lots of things like that. I think that is an untapped market here in Australia, and I'd love to be seen that we're actually working together with people like the Bain McKinseys and BCGs that don't have tax businesses. For us, that's a real differentiator and something that we're really focused on doing as well. So a couple of things in that response, Adam.
Well, I think like there's big plans, and that I think you're certainly have the right skill set to lead A&M over there. So I wish you good luck in all of that. And it was great talking to you. And I couldn't have picked up a better guest to pick up in Australia for our first client. And thank you so much for it.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate your time.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Yeah, Bruce.